So we're going to go ahead and look at ionic nomenclature and formula writing. So first of all, let's talk about the types of elements that make up ionic compounds. Typically, we've looked at this in a very basic perspective. We know that ionic compounds are going to consist of a metal and a non-metal in most cases. Okay. However, we know that this definition is lacking, or this approach is lacking because, of course, there's exceptions. So something like NH4Cl, okay, ammonium chloride, is an ionic compound. But as you can see, there is no metal present, okay? So a better definition, or a more all-encompassing definition of the types of components of an ionic compound are going to be the cation and anion definition. Okay, so we know cations are positive, anions are negative. Okay, NH4 is a positively charged polyatomic cation. Okay, chlorine in this case is a chloride ion. It's a negatively charged anion. So this right here is an ionic compound despite the lack of metal. Now, with that being said, most of the time this setup is going to help you identify your compound as ionic. But just remember, there's always little outliers, and this more all-encompassing definition will help you with those situations. Now, we know that ionic compounds form because positives and negatives attract each other through electrostatic interactions. Okay, so these cations and anions being present are what composes our ionic compounds. Now, let's look at our ionic nomenclature. We're going to first start with ionic compounds where the metal or the cation is in the main group, meaning the S and the P block. Okay, so in this context, guys, we're always going to write our metal or our cation first. Okay, the anion gets written second. And depending on the characteristic of the anion, that's going to dictate whether we end or change the ending of the name to "ide," or if we just use the whole name of the anion. Okay, so in the case of polyatomic ions, being the anion, you're going to just leave that name. So phosphate, sulfate, carbonate, okay, you're going to write the whole thing out. If your anion or your nonmetal is monoatomic, okay, meaning consisting of one type of atom, you're going to take the name of that element and change the ending of it to IDE. So chlorine, for instance, will become chloride. Okay. Now, if we look at a couple examples here, okay, CaI2, we know this is an ionic compound. We have a metal and a nonmetal. Okay, so that's a quick way to check again. Okay, we're going to write the name of the metal or the cation. Okay, we're going to write the name of the anion or the nonmetal, okay, iodine. But remember, because it's monoatomic, we're going to change the ending to "ide." Okay, now here's another example. Okay, CaCO3. Okay, we got our metal here. Okay, we have a polyatomic here. Okay, but they're all made up of nonmetals. Okay, so we have another ionic compound here, but our nomenclature is going to change slightly because of the fact that we have a polyatomic. Okay, so the metal still gets written first, so calcium gets written, and then CO3, which is the carbonate ion, gets written out like so. So these same procedures are going to carry over to our next part, okay, which is going to address how nomenclature changes when the metal is a transition metal, meaning a metal that we find in the D block. So in this case, it's all of the same approach. The difference is, though, is that we need to include Roman numerals to indicate the oxidation state of the metal. Remember, transition metals typically have multiple oxidation states possible. Okay, and because they can be charged differently, we have to say what their charge is specifically. Okay, so if we look at the example that we have here, we have FeI2, okay, Fe is our metal, iodine is our nonmetal, so we have an ionic compound. We're going to follow all the same rules as the last examples. Okay, iron is the metal, it gets written first. Iodine is the nonmetal, okay, but it's monoatomic, so we change the ending to "ide." Okay, now, in order for us to figure out the Roman numeral here, we're going to have to look at the charge on the anion. Okay, so if we look at this from this perspective, we don't know iron's charge, but we know we have two iodides. Okay, now we know iodides have -1 charge. I have two of them. And in order for the charge to balance, iron has to have a positive true charge. Because remember, your positives and negatives for your ionic compounds have to cancel each other out. So in order to balance these two negative charges, the iron has to have a +2 charge, which is why we write the Roman numeral 2 here. Okay. Now, again, another example. We have copper here, which is a metal. Okay, we have a polyatomic here, which is going to be our nonmetal. So again, we have an ionic compound. Okay, copper is a transition metal. So we know we're going to have to do some extra stuff, but before we do that, let's just do the basics. Copper gets written first because it's the metal. This is a polyatomic nitrate. Okay, so we write out the full name just like we did before. Okay, and then now we need to figure out the charge on our metal. Okay, so again, copper, and then we have a single nitrate ion. Okay, this is a nitrate. It has a -1 charge. Okay, I have 1 copper. So in order for those charges to be balanced, copper has a +1 charge. Okay, and that's why we write that Roman numeral right here. Okay, now this is the procedure, guys, but of course there's exceptions as we continue to talk about. Okay, so some transition metal exceptions. Okay, so Ag and Zn. Okay, Ag and Zn do not use the Roman numeral system, and that's because they only have one oxidation state, which is +1 and +2 respectively. Okay, main group metal exceptions, Pb and Sn. Okay, we are going to use the Roman numerals. Normally for main group metal containing ionic compounds, we don't, but we're going to use it. And that's because both of these can either be a +2 or +4 charge. So because they have variable oxidation states, we'll need to use that Roman numeral system. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to our formula writing. Okay, so again, we've talked about previously how the positives and negative charges must be balanced in our ionic compounds. Okay, so when we see something like MgBr2 here, okay, what that is saying is that there is 1 Mg and 2 Brs. Okay, now we know that bromine, when it forms an anion, becomes -1. So we have 2 negatively charged bromines. Okay, and we know that magnesium, when it forms a cation, it forms +2 charged cation. Okay, now if we notice, this +2 is being balanced by each of these -1s. Okay, so that interaction between the positives and negatives needing to be balanced, okay, is what is going to allow us to utilize an easy method for writing our chemical formulas for ionic compounds. Okay, so the first thing that we're always going to do is we are going to first write the ion charges, and the cation always gets written first. So we have an example here. We're going to look at magnesium oxide first. Okay, so first thing we're going to write are the ions. Okay, so we got Mg, right? Mg and O. Mg has a +2 charge. O has a -2 charge. We know this from our knowledge of the periodic table. Okay, so that's step 1. Okay, step 2, we're going to cross down the numbers. Okay, so this number becomes the subscript for O. This number becomes the subscript for Mg. And what we end up with is Mg2O2. Okay, so that's our step 2. Now, step 3 says we need to reduce the subscripts where possible. So if we look at this, we have a subscript of 2 and 2 on both of these. Okay, now both of them can be reduced down to whole numbers if we divide both by 2. So if we do that, our final formula that we end up with is going to be MgO. Okay, so this is our first approach here. Okay, again, you write the ions, you cross those down, you reduce them down if possible. Okay, now if we go ahead and we look at a slightly different example here, we have iron 3 nitrite. Okay, same approach. We're going to go ahead and we're going to write out our elements, or excuse me, our ions. So iron, Fe, has a +3 charge. I know that because the Roman numeral tells me. And then we have our nitrite ion, which is going to be NO2 -1, and I know that because I'm familiar with my polyatomics. Okay, now we're going to follow the next step, which is the cross down of those numbers from the charges down to the subscripts. But because we're dealing with a polyatomic, we're going to do a nice little bookkeeping thing. We're going to put parentheses around that polyatomic. Okay, so that way we don't accidentally assume that the subscript that is here is part of this cross down method. Okay, so if we do that, okay, we end up with Fe with a 1, okay, and then parenthesis NO2, parenthesis 3. Okay, now notice we have a subscript of 1, we have a subscript of 3. That can't be reduced down any. We can't divide anything in evenly to both of those. Okay, so the formula isn't going to have any reduction. However, a couple things to think about. We do not write subscripts of 1, they are inferred. So we're going to need to rewrite this so that it follows protocol. Okay, so what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to write Fe without a subscript of 1 because it's implied. Okay, we're going to write our polyatomics formula, and then we're going to write the subscript that we crossed down. Okay, so this is the approach that you take to write chemical formulas for ionic compounds, as well as the nomenclature procedures. So let's go ahead and let's look at our covalent nomenclature and formula writing. Okay, so the types of elements that make up covalent compounds are usually nonmetals and nonmetals, or metalloids and nonmetals. Okay, so identifying our compounds as covalent using these identifying elements is what we're going to use. So covalent nomenclature is going to be different than ionic nomenclature. It consists of utilizing prefixes to indicate how many of each element you have. Okay, and the basic format, guys, you're going to start typically with a prefix. The first element, you're going to tell me how many of that element you have by utilizing the prefix. The prefixes that you need to get familiar with can be seen over here. Okay, now as a quick note, the prefix mono is never used on this first element. Again, it's inferred. Okay, typically the least electronegative element, its full name, is going to be written next. Okay, then a prefix is going to indicate the next quantity of that atom type in your compound. Okay, then the more electronegative element is written. Now, that name is written, but again, we're going to change that ending to IDE. So chlorine becomes chloride, similar to what we saw in the ionic nomenclature. Okay, so if we go ahead and we look at this example here, okay, we got our nonmetal and our nonmetal. Okay, all right, nonmetal, nonmetal, we know this is covalent, so we're going to follow this protocol. Okay, so there's only one carbon. The prefix there is mono, but remember we do not use mono as a prefix for that first element, so we're just going to write the name of the element, carbon. Okay, now there are 2 of the oxygen atoms. So the prefix for 2 is di. So we're going to write that prefix. Oxygen is the name of the element. So we have ox. But remember, we changed the ending to IDE. So carbon dioxide is how we write this compound's name. Now, another example here, N2O3. Okay, we have 2 nitrogens. So our prefix is going to be di. Okay, the element is nitrogen. So we write out that name. Okay, notice we did use a prefix in this first one because it's something other than mono. Okay, our second element, there are 3 of them, so the prefix is tri. Okay, so tri is the prefix we're going to write. Oxygen's the element. Okay, so oxygen becomes oxide, and we have dinitrogen trioxide as our name for this compound. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and look at the formula writing. Okay, now the prefixes, again, guys, just like we used the subscripts to tell us what prefix we were going to use in the name, okay, the prefix is going to tell you what number of subscript you should write. Okay, so carbon tetrachloride, first of all, we got our nonmetal. Chlorine, right, is a nonmetal, so we know this is covalent. Okay, carbon, there's no prefix, so the implication there is that mono, there's only one of them, so we write a C. Okay, chlorine is our element. The prefix tells us that we have 4 of them. So we're going to write chlorine, and then we're going to go ahead and indicate that there are 4 of them as our subscript. Okay, so the procedure here, guys, we just take those prefixes. It tells us how many of that element we have. Okay, so diiodine pentoxide. Okay, iodine, is the element. There's 2 of them because of the prefix di. Oxygen, okay, there's pent, which is a prefix for 5. There are 5 of them, I2O5. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Now again, guys, if we look here, carbon monoxide, again, there's no prefix in this first one, so that implies that it's mono, so there's just 1 carbon. Okay, now notice I am using the mono prefix here because it's in the second component or second element in the compound. Mono means 1, so CO. Okay, now notice there's no reduction of subscripts. There's none of that. We're not accounting for charges because there aren't any. Okay, we are just looking at prefixes to tell us how to do our nomenclature.